I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And I, as always, have an amazing warrior guest for you, Marie Elizabeth. And I'm not even going to say her last name because she told me not to. And I'll come back to her in a second. But first, I want to share, success is a journey. It's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie, as well as those zombies in our world, and in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause. They have unique value and a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's guest is no exception. Marie Elizabeth is an awesome warrior. She's a mother, a speaker, a consultant, coach, and an author. Her journey began with a dream. However, the zombies of 4 incurable, debilitating autoimmune disorders and losing everything resulted in a dream fading into the background. After 30 years of stress and intense pain and seeking and ultimately finding solutions for mindset, health, and wealth, Maria's mission today is to create collective awareness through summits, authoring, and social media by telling her story about her miraculous healing online and how the internet changed her life and how it can do it for you. Using solutions, systems, tools, and techniques that are totally transferable, including mindful investing, the use of AI and automation for conscious marketing, and combined with, and here's what I think is most important, with her trust in God and life's process, those have been the catalyst for her discovering her purpose, which is inspiring others to never give up on their dreams. And I absolutely love that, knowing my life purpose being changing the world one dream at a time. So we are very aligned there. So Marie Elizabeth, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things in South Africa today? I've never spoken with somebody from South Africa on this podcast.
Hello, David and audience. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. South Africa is a wonderful, beautiful country, but I believe like everything else and everywhere else, it depends on how you look at it. There are a lot of negative people due to what's happening in the world, in every country and everybody's lives. But for me, it's awesome. I just love my country and love the world. It all depends on how we look at it.
I love that because actually, again, we just hit on another alignment point because my canned response, and it's really not canned, it's intentional. When somebody says, "How are you doing?" I say, "Always good." And they say, "How can you always be good? How can that always be good?" And I said, because that's a decision. And also I'm a Christian, so I have the spirit within me. So there's always something good about me, even if I'm having a bad day or the things around me. So that's beautiful. I love that. So I know it's not a weather forecast or whatever, but I'm always fascinated by where people are, what they're dealing with. And I know you're in the Southern Hemisphere and I'm on the other side. So seasonally, we kind of shift back and forth. Is it summer there, winter there? What are you dealing with there?
We are going into autumn. But even in winter, we have nice warm days and it's cold at night, but during the days, it's very comfortable. And at this stage, it's that nice, perfect weather. It's neither cold, no, not hot, neither is it hot. So it's just perfect.
Yeah, I love that. And so, yeah, I thought that was going to be the answer. So you're moving from summer into winter through fall, and we're moving from winter here in Dallas, which is kind of the same way. We're not as extreme as the northern states and stuff. And so we're moving from spring into summer. So it'll get very hot here. We do have some pretty extreme summer heat, but maybe not by midsummer or South Africa standards. I don't know. But anyway, we'll talk about that more offline. But because I know the audience is going, okay, I'm not planning to go to South Africa anytime soon. So let's get on with the podcast. So, any other things going on in your world that we should be aware of before we get into your story, which will be after we take a quick break?
To be honest, I think what's going on in my country is actually going on everywhere. It's economy, food prices, fuel prices. And like I say, I'm just thankful that I persisted and I didn't give up trying to find 100% passive income. It's been a very hard journey, but today I'm blessed and I'm thankful because a lot of people feel hopeless. And that is my mission, is to show people that if I could do it from really below zero on all levels, it took me almost a decade or more, but they don't have to now because I just give it freely, hoping to save others what I went through.
Well, I love that, and that for sure will be part of our discussion in the third segment here. So where you're at and the things that are inspiring you today and so on. Sounds like you guys are dealing with inflation. Interestingly enough, and this may sound arrogant to somebody in another part of the world, but we here in the United States or in this part of the world that we're in, if we're experiencing, most of the time you're experiencing it and it's even worse, or it's an extreme, or it's a caricature sometimes of what we experience, but not always. So I'm not surprised by that because inflation is a real thing. We say here in my neck of the woods where we're at that it hasn't gotten bad enough because people aren't really doing the things that a smart person would look at and say, how can they possibly believe that when they can see with their own eyes that that's not true? When the government tells you, oh, everybody's doing good, and you look at it and go, no, everybody's not. And that's just a lie. But if they say it loud enough, long enough, frequently enough, and they get enough people saying it, people kind of go, oh, well, maybe it's just me. No, it's not you. It's me. It's us. We're just not doing the right thing. So anyway, I don't want to get off onto that. What I want to do is take a quick break here, Maria, and I want the audience to hear this story that you said, below zero, got to where you are today, all of that, for autoimmune disease, all kinds of stuff that we introduced in the beginning here. And I want to hear that story. And then when we get to that, we'll go on to the next segment. So with that, let's take a quick break. We'll hear a little bit for the audio audience of our theme song, It's Not the Getting There, by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be right back with Maria Elizabeth and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day.
All right, well, we're warmed up and ready to go. And Maria, thank you again for joining us. Tell me this story. How did you get from where you started? And then we can talk about where you are today.
It's always very difficult to compound this story into an hour. So I'm going to call it the zombies, and then you can ask me about it. There's nothing that I'm not prepared to say, so you can ask me any question.
Okay.
I always wanted to be an artist since before I went to school, but due to our times and everything, I never became an artist. And I went to study occupational therapy, and at the end of my first year, I told my parents, but this is not what I want to do for life. So I'm a college dropout. I got married at 21, and then I walked around for 5 years from the age of about 24, from specialist to specialist, being so ill that I couldn't function. And they kept telling me it's in my head and it's not real. And I told them I didn't feel like this all the time. I wanted to do extreme sports, jump out of planes, cycling. I've always been an athlete. Then I divorced, leaving someone I still loved with a 15-month-old baby. In the middle of their divorce, I got retrenched from a very good job. I lost everything I worked my whole life for, and I started again at the age of 40 as a waitress to survive. Then I got married again. My second husband was terminally ill when I met him, but he was still fine. And I lost him at 42. Until today, he passed away 8 years ago. He was an engineer in the gold industry. They still haven't paid him his compensation. So at a stage, we literally had to survive on a government grant of $100 a month. Having all the abilities, the talents, and the experience I had, I couldn't even find a job for $100, $200 a month. And all this happened while I was extremely ill. While I was still married, there were days where I couldn't get out of bed. I would fall out of bed and pull myself up against furniture. I prayed many times to not wake up the next day. I just never had the guts to commit suicide, but I think I would have paid someone to do it for me. And I often find since my healing that I think because people don't know how bad it was, they don't realize the miracle. And I decided to start saying these things. I've sat with a 9mm in my hands. I wanted to drive off the cliffs. I just never had the guts. So this all happened fighting through the past almost a decade, being declared partially disabled and then fully disabled, end of November last year. And then I had to resign because of my integrity and who I am. Not knowing how I was going to survive, I had to resign from my disability. I think that was the first for the insurance company as well.
Wow.
And even still today, I still live hand to mouth at another level than I did. So I'm better off, but I still have to trust God and universe that I will be able to pay my bills at the end of the month.
Wow. Well, it sounds like we've hit a lot of the high points here of the journey, and all of those little zombies that you've illustrated there kind of give me pause, some of which I think I've experienced myself in various forms. So let's explore just a minute on so autoimmune conditions. Are we talking about like fibromyalgia? I mean, I'm not a health professional, but I do have people that are in the audience. Can you rattle off the types of autoimmune challenges that you experienced, just for my own curiosity, if nothing else?
Yes, I was diagnosed after that 5 years by a professor who's the head at the pain clinic at the University of Pretoria with fibromyalgia and myofascial pain syndrome.
Okay.
And then later on, when I moved to the town where I am now, Tietze syndrome and ankylosing spondylitis were added. So it was top university professors, so it's no woo-woo stuff. It's top professors and they're the heads of their divisions at both universities that diagnosed me and treated me.
So you got a formal diagnosis, which is a label as I view things. Many times in our Western, and I assume you're also, when you talk about formal medicine and, universities and peer-reviewed studies and all this stuff, which I know enough to be dangerous about. The whole key is that you've been successful in getting a label on it. It really just, sometimes the root cause is obscure. Just because they know to call it doesn't mean that the solution is a drug or some kind of acute intervention type of thing. So, yeah, okay. So you've got these physical things going on, then you've gone through, went through divorce, another zombie, loss of a spouse, terminal illness with that spouse, other things like that, and then loss of finances, all things that warriors listening to this podcast can relate to, not in a necessarily a good way, maybe triggering PTSD or whatever. For those of us who've experienced some of these things, dealing with them keeps us wanting to focus forward, not think about it. So, but beyond, so you got through that. You mentioned something that I really want you to comment on, and that is that you had these things going on, and they labeled the physical things, and then we mentioned in the introduction, you mentioned miraculous curing. So when you say miraculous, that just means unprecedented or something that you hadn't experienced, or maybe you don't know that the world has experienced. What was that?
Okay, let me start by saying during that 5 years when they told me it was all my imagination and my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and that was before the internet, so now I've given my age away.
It's okay. I'm older, so don't worry about it. And
I
be proud. You're still here. You didn't use that 9mm or run off a cliff. So I'm thankful that you're able to share your age. That's something we should celebrate. So don't worry about that. Okay, now that we got that out.
That's a privilege.
Yeah.
That's a privilege. With my husband dying at 42, I know that many don't get to grow older. I started digging, and at that time I started reading Professor Dr. John DeMartini's books about quantum physics and all the stuff about the mind. For 30 plus years, I dug into neuroplasticity, brain chemicals, health, mindset, self-development, just name it. And then you add the artist and forex trading, stocks, crypto, passive money. So it's one crazy basket. It's kind of too much. And they told me there's no cure. And I kept saying, I won't give up. They don't know what caused it, so they can't tell me there's no cure. I'm going to persist until I find it. Then, while I was married and I decided to fall pregnant, they said the chances of my child having it is 50-50. And I said to them, but if it's all in my mind, how can it be 50-50 that she can have it? Doesn't make sense. Long story short, I decided, well, if it's all in my mind, chances are small that my child will have it. I fell pregnant, and since a very young age, she had the same aches and symptoms. And I could see them, and she would come to me, and I could see by her reactions. I took her to the pediatrician, and I said, I've asked the mothers around me with the children of the same age, it's not growing pains. He must please check for me. So she was diagnosed at around between 15 months and 24 months. With fibromyalgia as well, and on 2 more occasions during my lifetime. And because of that, it was even a bigger reason for me to not give up finding the solution and the cure, because it wasn't just me anymore.
Amen.
So I kept persisting, and I said I wouldn't give up. Then on 15 November, a year ago, Walt Thiessen from LOA in New York interviewed me, asked me how did I persist for that long and how it led me to making passive money. And 15 days later, the insurance company I worked for as a regulated financial advisor declared me fully disabled. Then Walt asked me to speak at his abundance workshop, which was the summit, and do a workshop there, which was about abundance and money. Before the last session, which was the healing session, I was asked to speak at the Empowered Women World Summit and Thoughts Becomes Things. And I was asked for an interview in Australia for Law of Attraction and in Canada for Rise to Higher Heights. And this was all recorded without me planning it. The before, then the workshop I went into, I did not even look at the presenter because the day he presented, everything technically went wrong on my side, and I was working on my presentation. So going into the session, I had no idea who he was and what he was doing. I was supporting Walt because he invited me. During the session, just before the session, I'm not into astrology and numerology and these things, but there came a post up on my Facebook feed saying one or other portal is up for health and finances. And in my mind, I just said, it was about 2 hours before the interview, I said to myself, this is mine. This is for me. And I just moved on. Then during the session, they said that Daniel Mangena does unblocking of subconscious money mind block. And he asked for a volunteer. No one reacted. So I said, me. I don't have money. And if I have any money blocks, please remove them. After he did what he did, it's almost like a meditation, but it's not meditation. I felt kind of disorientated. But it was 1:30 at night, and the whole week I was in US time training with someone for 5-6 hours every night, so I assumed I was just tired.
Right.
Then every person that he did after me, I would close my eyes and do what he said for them, and I did the same thing for me. Sorry, before I forgot to say this, which is very important. That afternoon, 10 days before the session, I was at the university. They inject me 34 trigger points every 3 to 4 months. They can't give me more, or they couldn't give me more, because it would make your heart stop if they give you too much of the substance. It's the same that dentists give you lidocaine when they inject you.
Oh, lidocaine, yeah. Right.
Yes. So, based on your weight, they can only give you so much. So they normally mark all the places, and then we choose the 34 worst ones. And every 3 months, 4 months during COVID, I would go back and we just repeat. And I had my injections 10 days before. The marking pen circles and the needle pricks were still showing on my body. And I couldn't sit barefoot with my feet on the carpet. I had to sit with my feet on the sides. That afternoon, I was walking crippled because of a specific trigger point on my right top leg. And I thought to myself, I can't walk with this for 3 or 4 months. And I took the pen, marking it with the idea I want to go back on the Monday and get the injection. And I was watching training, and I would keep sitting with my hands like this, and my breath would hurt my hands. That's something I was used to. When the wind blew through my hair or over my arms and my body, I would feel it, and it would physically hurt you. And I would move my hands every time to under my chin, and I would forget. So I was aware of these things. For instance, when I walk barefoot on the tiles, when I step on that groove, it hurt. I couldn't hold a pen. When I'm driving a car, just using the pedals, holding the steering wheel, opening the window, changing gears, everything hurt. When I took the kettle, I never wore tight clothes, jeans with seams. When I was really ill at night, if my pajamas or the sheets would make a fold, it would wake me at night. And I often, when I was really ill, I injected myself up to 3 times a day with Voltaren just to stay upright. And I would drink sleeping tablets 3 times a night. I would sometimes sweat so much at night that I had to change my clothes, go have a bath and change clothes in the middle of the night. I don't really talk about these things. So this is call it the pre. And then right at the end, when Daniel Mangena did the exercise with Maltese and the presenter, and I, like with everybody else, I did the same. And I saw that Walt had the same, when he came out of it, he had the same reaction, but I think times 10 or more than I had. And then I realized, but it wasn't just that I was tired. And I can see at a stage they taught me self-hypnosis when the patches that they give terminal cancer patients for pain, Duragesic, that didn't work, nothing worked. Duragesic and fentanyl is 300 times stronger than morphine. They taught me self-hypnosis. And at the end of this session, all of a sudden, I just felt different. And I started stomping my feet on the carpet, and I felt, but there's no pain. And I didn't know what was going on. And I remembered the afternoon, and I searched for the trigger point, because that trigger point is like a marble sitting under your skin. You don't need a medical person to feel it. Anybody, I can let feel anybody. And then I blew on my hands and all the pain was gone.
Wow.
I mean, to me, it was just, at the end of this, you can hear me saying when I watched it later, I realized I thought it was still self-hypnosis. And I said, I have stopped doing these things. I have forgotten how powerful it is. And then when I saw that Walt was disorientated and felt the way I do, I could see he couldn't finish the session. And I said to Daniel, while Walt is coming to himself, I've got a question. For the past about 3 years, it felt as if something is blocking me subconsciously, quantum physically, cell memory. I don't know what, and I can't find anyone to help me. And Daniel basically said to me, and all this is also recorded. I've put it on my YouTube. I just cut out the other people because I didn't have their permission.
Sure.
And he said that by arguing with the professors, I hold on to the illnesses. I'm not letting go of it. And I said to him, no, but I've stopped a long time ago arguing with them because they just make me angry and cross. I don't do it anymore. I just do my thing. And then he said to me, but that means in my mind, I'm still arguing. And when he said it, I didn't want to say to him, but I'm not doing it. But I realized, but I'm not aware that I'm doing it. And I never had these voices in my head. The whole 30 years, it was part of my problem. I never had voices saying I'm not good enough and all those things since I was young. Even as a teenager, if I believed in something, I would get up against Million and I would say, this is what I believe and this is what I do. And long story short, while I was still married, I started digging into this. When they diagnosed me, they kept telling me I was abused and molested and sexual stuff. And I said, I've got nothing like that in my life because I had an extremely happy childhood. When we would go to see psychologists for therapy when I was married, they said to me, it's not 1 out of 1,000,000. You don't get it. A family like that, it's less than 1 out of 1,000,000. You don't get families like that. Now, long story short, a long time ago, I started suspecting I only had one trauma in my life.
Okay.
You could say there's a possibility of a second one, but I knew the second one wasn't. I went to boarding school when I was 5, 6 years old, when I went to school. But I know it wasn't traumatic to me because when the older children, which were 3, 4 years older than me, used to cry at night, I would get up and I would go and console them and speak to them and calm them down. And I was very independent my whole life. But when I was 3 years old, which now comes back, some of these things I only realized just before the end of last year. Some of the information came to me. But I started suspecting it and I started digging in their direction. When I was 3 years old, I can't remember my brother. I can't remember trauma or heartache or anything because it's in that 0 to 6, 7 years where your portal closed down and you don't remember it.
Right.
My eldest brother was 15 at the time and his best friend shot him in an accident.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and my parents had to later ask that they switch off the machines and life support and everything. But I don't remember the trauma. But I realized that when I feel powerless, you can give me really extreme, difficult situations as long as I can do something. The moment I felt powerless, I couldn't cope. And I started thinking if it comes from that time, because I was powerless to do anything for my family. And the other trigger I saw is while I was married, if my husband would get in the car and just go to the garage or the shop or wherever, I would get upset if he didn't say goodbye. And I could see it was a trigger. It was not the normal upset because it's rude or anything. I actually said the words, what if something happens to one of us and we never see each other? So those were the things that started making me think it comes from there.
Wow.
And so I dug my whole life and I did anything strange and stuff that I didn't even believe in, digging into this.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I think it comes from there. After 50 plus years, I think what happened based on my knowledge and experience and the stuff that I've studied, obviously my brother was 7 at the time, my other brother. So he was just out of the 0 to 7 for
Right.
those. So it had a different impact on me. But it looks, and the assumptions that I'm making is that because my parents and the whole family was in survival, and in my subconscious mind, I experienced a lack or not receiving what I needed at that time, and I physically couldn't give it. And in fact, just before the end of last year, I've got very strong boundaries, but I tend to give people too many chances and let them go too far, and then I hit. So it's kind of trying to be the nice girl, and I couldn't understand where it comes from because it never made sense to me. And just before the end of last year, I found a video that said that abuse and overprotectiveness has the same impact, and it causes that. And then I realized that my mother said to me after my brother's death, she would cross the street with my brother and I, the other one, and we would complain that she's hurting us because she's holding too tight onto us, onto our hands. And she said to me, it felt as if death is going to grab another one.
Wow.
And then on top of that, I got healed in January on the summit. And then my mother got COVID in June. I looked after her. I sat with her at hospital. She came out, and then because of another lung infection, she went back. And June was my last month and my last $500. I didn't know how I was going to survive in July. And coming to the lack mindset, my mother had a lack mindset due to when she was a young child. Her father lost everything in the depression, and they had to go and work for another farmer and everything. And she lived with it until she died on the 2nd of July. Now, obviously, I don't have proof of any of this, but my mother was not just my mother. She was my best friend my whole life. And it looks as if there was a tie, one or other bond, because my mother died on the 2nd of July, and from nowhere, my passive income was $500, which was exactly what I needed in July. And from there onwards, it just multiplied and became better. So I don't have scientific proof, but based on what I've learned and my knowledge and studies my whole life, I believe there was a bond.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There possibly could be. So, and that, wow. I mean, thank you for sharing that. That's quite a journey. So going through that as I'm listening to you, there is strong connections. We inherit, there's what we call epigenetic. We inherit mindset and disposition and triggers from our other generations, especially when it overlaps where you're in the first 7 years and you hit on that. The other thing is that you said that I think is fascinating is when certain events that didn't seem to be connected occurred, then other blocks that maybe, as you call them, were there, went away. So now that we're getting kind of close to today, we're talking about where you are. So if you look back on that, what would you say was the big trigger that eliminated all those blocks and prepared you for today? And then we're going to take a break and come back and we're going to talk about today.
I think in each phase, everything was a zombie. And I think until I worked on mindset and everything my whole life, and I think energetically, I prepared myself. The most difficult thing for me was to start vibrating and feeling as if I was already healed, as if I was abundant, as if I had love.
Right.
I honestly don't know exactly what pushed me over. I personally think I prepared myself my whole life, and I started seeing everything and every lesson and suffering, call it, as a blessing, as learning from it and taking me to where I want to be. I wasn't there, but I think I read it myself. And then I believe God and universe for Daniel Mangena, who had the knowledge, because in the past he did healings.
Right.
He stopped doing it because he couldn't prove it, and he moved over to money because he can prove what he's doing
Right.
with a bank balance. And I saw since this happened, he had 3 other sessions again. And I think God and universe put the right person in the right place. I mean, I couldn't afford Daniel, even if I knew about him. It was like Dr. De Martini.
Right.
I could never afford Dr. Martini. And that is actually one of the things that kept blocking me. Every time I wanted to do something about my health, I got blocked. I didn't have the USD. I didn't have the USD. And that's what, in the end, pushed me to find 100% passive income. And I didn't want to find it in South African rand. I said I want it in dollar. And I'm not going to give up until I do it. People laughed at me and they said, because I said, I just want to make $1 online. And they said, what are you going to do with $1? I said, then I'm going to learn how to make $1 a day. And when I know how to do that, I'm going to make more per day. And still today around me, nobody knows what I'm doing. They don't believe in it. Making money online is not possible. But because of my experiences now, too good to be true exist in my mind. And because I believe in too good to be true, all these too good to be truths are hitting me, and I don't know what's hitting me.
Well, I love that, and I think we could go for quite a while here. But all I want to say is I love this story. Thanks for sharing. I can tell just from listening to you that there's a lot more that we could talk about. And just as a plug for one of the things that I'm doing is we're going to do Triggered by Warrior versus Zombie, another podcast, and we may drill into this as we get to know you a little bit more. So, and have another episode on that podcast, which is just launching. So, but with that, let's do this. I want to, when we come back, I'm going to talk about why, but I also want to hear this one thing you said as we were talking and preparing for this podcast, which is the internet changed my life and it can change the life for you. So obviously that's a conclusion that you drew from your story. And I want to use that to kind of bounce into why are you doing what you're doing today, the unique value, and so on. So let's take a quick break. We'll hear a little more of our theme song, It's Not the Getting There, for the audio audience by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll come back with Why Are You Doing What You're Doing Today segment of Warrior versus Zombie with Maria Elizabeth.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom.
All right, that was fun. So, as I said before we took the break, I want to hear about this online. You kind of started to touch on that, and I really want to take that into why are you doing what you're doing today?
I always find it interesting, and I told you before the interview, how before the interview I put this thing together of what I'm going to say. I didn't plan on saying any of what I've said in this interview. It just flowed through me. None of it was planned. I wasn't planning. I haven't shared the stuff about the lack and my mom's story, etc. I haven't shared it at all. But every time everything goes wrong before the interview or the summit, technically, like today, and then I just jump and I say, God and universe, tell me what's supposed to come out.
Love it.
8 years ago, when my husband passed away, I had the equivalent of $2 in my wallet. No job. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I could not even bury my husband. Now, I'm earning almost for a year that I've been earning 100% passive income, more than I earned as a regulated advisor, and more than I've earned on my disability. I'm not closely to where I want to be. I know I'm going to go far, but I'm not chasing the money. I'm not marketing. I'm not selling, and I'm not building teams. And I find that a lot of people don't understand this. But when I go look at what the top coaches in the world say, they say that just solve your own problem. There are many others who have that problem. Solve it for them, and the money will come by itself. And that's basically what happened in this first part to me. And that's why what happened from June to July happened. I'm still call it living from hand to mouth, just at another level. But I've been through every scam, every fake, every Ponzi, and everything that you can think about. But that gave me the knowledge and experience I have today. And somebody said to me the other day, if I could exchange my knowledge and experience for $1 million, now in my life, $1 million is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But they wiped my slate clean, and I don't know all those things. And I said, no, I wouldn't. Because what I know, what I've learned, what I've experienced can make me and other people much more money than $1 million. And I'd rather suffer and struggle and learn a bit longer and give the people that resonate with who I am, what I'm doing, the opportunity to not have to go through those frustrations, fakes, time, and learning that I had to go through.
That's beautiful. I mean, the thing is, that's a warrior attribute that I see almost with every warrior guest that I have, and that is that we learn something, we fix our own problem, we fix our own self, and then we say, wow, it took me a long time to get there. It took me a lot of struggle. I had a lot of life is challenge and support, right? I mean, life is all about that. You, DeMartini, I'm familiar with. Joe Dispenza, I'm familiar with. I'm very, mainly on my own journey, trying to figure out why certain things happened in my life or happened with my clients. And so I get that. And when the warriors that I find that I love hearing their stories and then hearing their vision, it usually translates into, hey, I figured this out and I want to take that forward and help other people. And so when you look at that impact, and that's a powerful impact, Maria, that's something that helping other people not go through the lack, the loss, the scarcity, the things that you experience is beautiful. What kind of impact are you looking for to make it on millions? Are you doing, we've talked a little bit, I get the sense that it's kind of like I do, divine appointment. People reach out to you, they see the alignment, they hear, that's what I kind of read in some of the intro stuff that you had given me. Is that where you're at, or is that, tell me a little bit about that.
I never planned on sharing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't choose this.
Right.
I didn't choose this path. The path chose me. And I always wanted for myself to automate and use AI. So that was always my plan, because I said my target is to have 100 platforms or companies, each with a minimum of 10K in them. If one of them changes or closes, then I don't feel it. I don't even want to know it. Mm-hmm. And I always say to my audience, when they go into fear, because most people I work with have been scammed, mm-hmm. I understand it and everything, but I say to them that the science behind it is that I can give you all the proof, all the knowledge, all the information. If you are in fear, you are not going to believe me. And the reality, because of me studying for myself brain chemistry, fear, mindset, and everything, few people understand when I say to them, your health impacts your thinking. When your gut health is not healthy, your brain and your whole nervous system is inflamed and you can't make decisions. So I don't do the mindset and the health part because my experience was that if you are in survival on all levels, you cannot function. Money is not everything, but not having money is everything.
It's like oxygen, right? Yeah, it's
Yes.
it's like you need it. I find it fast. I want to just react to that very thing because I think a lot of people don't realize the fact that it's not the people who have a lot of money that spend any mindset or focus on money. If you have money and you have plenty, which I've been blessed to be there at times, it's not something that comes top of mind. Everything else comes top of mind. If you don't have it, like you don't have enough oxygen to fill your lungs, that's all you think about. And the thing is, the people who look at the greedy rich people with envy are really looking at it from a place of scarcity, lack, those kinds of things. So it is such a fascinating dichotomy that we work in our brain. So you really want to have that impact. You really want people to realize the potential that you've realized. What else? In terms of your unique value, I always find that the story is important, and you've got a great story. That informs you. Nobody else has your story, right? So you've gone down this journey. You've learned these things. So if I listen to you, that's why I do networking. That's why I'm always looking to run my life by divine appointment, right? It's because I want to learn from somebody in South. I love this platform because I can learn now from somebody in South Africa, and I'm in Dallas, Texas. So I think that's a beautiful thing. As you look at yourself, at your journey and where you're at, what would you say is kind of your secret sauce or your unique value that you bring? Do you have a comment on that?
In terms of business, I've found, or I should say it found me because I didn't find it, something I thought was never, ever possible. 100% passive income from day one, 3 easy steps, set up in 30 minutes. And now what's happened for me now is that I've got FINRA SEC regulated company that pays me more than everything I've done in the past decade and that I've searched for. I did not think this existed.
Wow.
So that is in terms of business. There's nothing safe in the space that we are in with banking meltdowns, war, pandemics.
I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. It's a mess, yeah.
But I believe this is as safe as 100% passive make money gets with regulated advisors, a regulated company, and I did not believe that you can get higher returns than the crypto passive space that I was in. Personally, I think my unique value is I don't judge anyone. When I was young, I used to be very black and white. I think because of my happy childhood, I think life was easy. I thought things worked this in black and white. And I think life took me down each and every road to humble me, to show me to never judge. And now I've got the knowledge, the experience, tools, systems, and techniques, which is totally transferable. Talent is not, but what I have, I can transfer to almost anybody, and it is potentially going to relieve life-threatening stress for everyone. Anyone that is prepared to take the action and empower themselves. As you will know, the choice is always the other person. And I don't push anybody. I don't try to convince them. I tell my story. I show what I do, how I do it. If you want to get on the train, whether it's looking each other in the eyes for those few seconds, whether it's hours, weeks, months, it's hardly ever a lifetime.
Right.
And I just believe sharing my love, my care, who I am. But because of that as well, I don't work with anybody because they are energy vampires who just want to complain, don't want to do what they're supposed to do. And they want me, like the fairy godmother, to take them from $100 to $1 million in 5 minutes. And I can't do that.
Well, I love that, and I know we're going to get drilled down into it. And one of the things we haven't got on our schedule or our calendar is probably do a focused episode of our Warrior Networking Mastermind, which is a little longer. We can drill into the hows, and maybe you can introduce us. So, for those that are on this audience and understand that there's another opportunity to talk to Maria and get some focus, I'll share that, or you can go to our channel. Well, let's do this. I want to get into we're going to have to get into the land of plain segment. This may be long, maybe not. I don't really care, because I think it's been fascinating, and I love hearing your story, and I love hearing your vision, and I am very piqued myself about understanding more. So that means our journey will continue. But let's take another quick break for the audio audience. We're going to hear a little more of our theme song, It's Not to Get There by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be right back in what I call the Land the Plains segment with Maria Elizabeth. And we'll hear about, if we take away anything from all these fascinating subjects in this, what do we take away? So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul. And by the grace of God,
Maria, fascinating. Got both hemispheres going on here in full tilt. So I love that. So tell me, as I said before the break, if we take away anything, all the things that you've learned on your journey, all the things that you're learning and you're talking about and sharing about those things, what would the one thing or two, warriors are always overachievers, so you might give me more than one. That's okay. I learned that early on in this podcast, not to restrict warriors. But if we take away anything from this podcast, what would you want us to take away?
I would like to give the process of never giving up on impossible dreams, to vibrate as if you have it already, to think it, speak it. If no one around you believes in it, do it online, in your diary, for yourself, but just keep believing it, acting on it, and I can guarantee you it will come true. And there isn't anything like impossible. Too good to be true exists. I've experienced that since my healing, becoming independent, passive, with 100% passive income, and it keeps happening to me every day. I mean, just to me, as a barefoot farm girl from South Africa, my bio has become, I'm a barefoot farm girl from Central South Africa. What happened, happened. It is what it is. And I say it as it is. Just being on this podcast, it was not something I could plan. Mm-hmm. Speaking at 2 Empowered Women World Summits, releasing my book at the second one. Last year, I was nominated as one of the 100 most inspirational people by Honda magazine. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And that's how I know it's not my story.
Right.
I'm not putting this together. There's a higher hand at play here, and that's why I have to share it. I didn't want to. I did not want to share it, and I have to. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. My whole life as well, I was looking for my purpose, and I couldn't find my purpose. And all the suffering and everything that I went through now led me to my purpose.
Well, I love that. And it sounds like we could explore that. I want to give the audience a couple of takeaways that you just gave us. One is, and you connected 2 dots, and you I think you know this, but you said You envision what you want. You know what you want. You keep it in front of mind. The thing that a lot of people miss is you act on it. The secret isn't the secret if you don't live it. And if you don't believe it, you won't live it. If you don't see it, you won't live it. If you don't act on it, you won't have it. So, and if you don't act on it, then you really don't believe it, in my mind. So as a warrior, your beliefs, even though you have to realize, and by the way, I say this is in my Bible, okay? All things are possible. So there is no too good to be true. The only too good to be true is that you don't have the components you need to realize that vision. So you've put that out there in your story. You put that out there even in your response to this question. And that is something that everybody should take away. So let me do this. We're going to have to land the plane, as hard as it is for me to do. So Maria, how do we stay in touch? This is on the Be Connected platform. You're on the platform. It's very early innovator opportunity. So people listening to this are going to go, what's that all about? Maria can tell you it's invitation only. So it gives you an opportunity that other people don't have. And she's learning how to introduce this, I'm sure, in her context of living her ideal day as I do. So tell me, how do we stay in touch beyond just on this platform?
It's very easy. My email is makepassivemonynow@gmail.com, and they will find me with my full ID name, Maria Elizabeth, on Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere. I'm not active everywhere, but if they send me a message in Facebook or LinkedIn or email, they'll get me.
Beautiful. Like it's simple. Like it's simple. When I'm listening to podcasts, I always want to know where to go, and I can always go back to the end of the podcast. So that's where you go to stay in touch with Maria Elizabeth and get connected to her power in South Africa. So anyway, so we've got to land the plane. Thank you, Maria, for being here. This has been fascinating. I can't wait to publish this audio and this replay. I think people are going to be blessed by it. So thank you.
I thank you and everybody else. If I can empower one person, it is enough.
That's it. Yep. I always say I've got thousands of people in my network, but if I can change one life, that life is changed, and that's priceless. So I love that. Well, we're going to have to land the plane. Let's go to Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll hear the final outro of It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be back next week.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.